I started writing the stories, the first story in this chronologically, which I think is the second story in the collection. I probably started writing when I was 21, which was a long time ago. I won't tell everyone how long ago that was. And then the last story was finished like 2 weeks, if not the week of actual submission. So it spans a really long period of time, and kind of captures the, I guess, vicissitudes, the changes in me over the time that I was writing, from being a young man who sort of aspired to be a writer through to like now being a father and things like that. And that kind of arc is, I think, captured in the collection. So it was strange, like the collection just came from kind of having a chat with Emma and then going back to my hard drive and seeing what interesting things I might have, and then thinking that maybe I had a collection. And I think it was an opportunity for me, and no reader will ever access this, to really like dive back into my past and myself and pull out the things that I thought might be interesting to other people, which is to an extent what writing is anyway, right? It's like you're presenting things that are very, very internal to you, but picking and choosing the bits that you think like, oh, this, very heartfelt thing might connect to somebody else. So it was amazing. It was an amazing process, and I loved it. And working with the team at Impress has been fantastic. But when it was done, and especially sort of receiving a printed copy, like you can't really compare that feeling to anything else. Like it's a culmination of a lot of work. I think actually moving to Birmingham, moving back to Birmingham, so born here, left on us 3, moved back when I was like 30 or something like that, so a long time away. I think being here like really reinvigorated my writing. I had an old literature teacher who said, like, in the way that kind of literature professors can say things like, nothing interesting ever happens in the core, it only ever happens on the periphery. I remember thinking that's really insightful and scribbling it down. But to an extent, I really do think that's the case. Like, Birmingham is such a unique place in that, obviously population-wise it's a second city, but like, conceptually within the mind of Britain, it's like, doesn't even exist. Like, you'd be surprised to know that Birmingham exists if you read The Guardian or The Telegraph or The Times or whatever. Except when like some kid does something wrong, that's when we exist, and then we disappear. So it's a unique place. Like, it's easy to access everywhere. It's like an unbelievably eclectic and mixed community. There's huge amounts of really interesting things happening here. But it's a place that always feels like not really in Britain. And I think that's like almost like a parallel of the position of a writer. Like, you always, I think, all the writers I know see themselves as kind of like external to things looking in. And this is a city that like is a really productive place for that perspective, because as like a geographical space it kind of functions that way. And it's nice to just write about a place that, for the most part people aren't writing about and thinking about. There's so many stories to be told about Birmingham that haven't ever been told, in the way that I think London is like really thoroughly tapped in the literary world. Birmingham is almost like this archive of experiences that no one's really delved into, and yeah, it's a cool place to be and be thinking about what we can say about the place. Also have a lot of Birmingham pride, so nice to kind of rep my city. That's an amazing question, and it's really weird. So a lot of strange things have come out of the thing being a complete object, rather than just stories that then needed to be constellated. In that I didn't think that if you asked me what I write about, I would never have told you I write about families. Ever. I'd say like, oh, I write about like disaffected individuals, or I write about like media culture or whatever. But it's so self-evident in this book that like so many stories are about families that are functional or dysfunctional or whatever in various different ways. I don't know what to say. I guess it's just something that is in me that it comes out through my work. I had a kind of unusual upbringing because I moved around a lot. I wasn't raised by my parents for a good chunk of my life, so I think all of that is just there, and you bring to the page. Someone very insightful also said to me recently, Eric Huntley said, you carry with you what you leave behind, and I think there's a lot of things that I didn't think I thought about that are in this work because I think they're with me. So yeah, apparently family is where I'm at, and actually I'm trying to finish a novel at the moment. And like, it's like after writing this and then going back to the novel, I was like, oh yeah, this is about families too. So it seems to be my theme. Yeah. So that piece, Roads, was a commission initially, but it's been edited since the original version of it was kind of debuted. So the commission originally off the back of Black Lives Matter to write a piece about a statue of an enslaved person, which is at Burton Constable Hall, which had been discovered, and several kind of black artists were, a historian, a dancer, and myself were commissioned to like do responses to it. And originally I wanted to do something that was really close to that object, something about that statue, in fact something historical. But I just kept being pulled back into the contemporary. And a thing that I've learned, I think, over the course of the 20 years that I've been writing the stories that went into this collection, is to kind of not restrain your work and just let it go where it wants to go. And I had just become a father very recently, after that commission, and was finding it extraordinarily difficult, not just because of the pandemic. And I'd been struggling also with being a black writer and the expectation, unspoken I think, that what you write is yourself. Like your work is somehow connected to you biographically. The few times I've read stories in public, there have been people who've said, like, I read a story and say, this is a fictional story about blah, and I read it, and someone will raise their hand and say, so in that story, when you do that thing, like, tell me about that. Like, this character is not me. So I wanted to do something that was really close to me, but not me, just to kind of play on that expectation of black writing, since I was writing about, Black Lives Matter and the reassessment of, like, the status of black folks here in the US, across the world. So yeah, it was an experiment really to write about